my dad owned a precision machine shop in Old Forge in the early 60s. And the only thing I would say that would relate to people today would be today's Artemis launches to the moon, the rockets that are going to the moon. My dad had a contract with the government back then. Apollo is probably the most famous of those launches back then, and the men landed on the moon. But preceding Apollo, there were two other missions. There was the Gemini, which was just before it, and before that was the Mercury missions. My dad had hundreds of parts from his machine shop in the Mercury. He loved the Christmas holiday, and he loved to decorate the house. He was very proud of our house. For instance, they had a large picture window in front of our house, and inside the house he would build a platform in front of that window, and it would rise up in the back, and every year he would have a whole different scene, a winter scene made with lights and so on, the old-fashioned big lights.
Kind of like a department store.
Yes, like a department store window, and we're the only house in the whole area of Pittston, and I don't recall anybody having this department store window type thing. And then he took pipes and he bent them into arches, and he would have about a dozen of those approaching the front door of our house, all lit up with garland and so on. And you'd have to walk under all these arches to get there. And again, it was all his inventiveness. So he had, in his machine shop, he had a contract with a company in Chicago that produced styrofoam. And back in the early 60s, people didn't even know what styrofoam was. And on a business trip that he went on to meet the people, he loved the styrofoam. He loved what it was. He couldn't believe it. And he loved what was left, pieces before it began or as it was left over. And he asked the owner of the company if he could take some of that home. And he brought it home, and it was very fine pieces of styrofoam. Well, that year he decided he's going to take a Christmas tree, an artificial Christmas tree, and take the center out of it and put a garden hose up the center of it. And he took my mother's canister vacuum cleaner, and he built a huge, it was much, much bigger than this operation that I have here, a huge, it looked like an upside down umbrella. And he hooked up the canister vacuum cleaner to it, and he filled that with the styrofoam pieces. Well, needless to say, the first 100 times he tried it, it blew all over the house, and my mother was beside herself. But he tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it until it worked. It works kind of on the theory of an atomizer. You know, when you buy a good perfume and it has the bulb that you squeeze, that pushes air over the top of the liquid, and it lifts it and throws it in the direction that the pump would. That works the same way. The bottom underneath the umbrella is the pump, and it blows up a pipe all the way up to the top. And then at the top, my dad, you see there's an ornament that has a bottom on it that's deflecting it down back on the tree. My dad took an angel, our regular angel, and he lined her inside of her dress with aluminum foil. And when the styrofoam went up and got caught inside the dress, it would spread it all over. And once again, he had to tweak it 100 times because that was all over the house. Well, he never patented that. And
how big was this tree?
So 6 feet or better. It was a big tree.
And was it full like this?
It was full like that, yes. And again, after my mother got over the initial shock of cleaning up after him all the time, and eventually she was bringing neighbors in to see it. People were talking about this Christmas tree. This is way back in the early 60s.
How old were you?
I would say it was about 9 or 10.
So it was still the wonder of Christmas.
Oh my God, yeah, it was absolutely. So that was the end of it. We never even thought of it after that. And he only put it out the 1 year, and that was it. Every year it was a different tree. My dad would put a live tree in 1 year, and we had the silver tinsel tree with the spinning light on it 1 year. And he loved Christmas. He loved to decorate. And again, he loved to invent little things. So my dad passed away in 1979. And in 2019, just before COVID hit, my wife and I used to go to New York City for Christmas every year. We're walking through Manhattan, and we're walking through a shopping district, and my wife stops dead in her tracks. And she said, "You're not going to believe what's in the window of this little store." And I turned, and there is a snowing Christmas tree. And it's a small one, it's about 4 feet tall. And I actually started to cry, and I'm going to start crying now because it brought back that childhood memory. So she said, "We have to go in and talk to them about this tree." So we went in, and I asked the gentleman in the store, where does this tree come from, and so on. And of course, my dad would never have any recognition because he didn't have any patent, and this was something that someone else came up with afterwards. And she said, "We have to have that tree." And I said, "What am I going to do with a tree in the middle of Manhattan? I'm parked at the hotel that's 20 blocks away." Well, naturally, I bought the tree, and I carried it on my back, on my shoulder, the 20 blocks back to our hotel, and we brought it home and assembled it. And that's the tree. This is this snowing Christmas tree